Hello, all, and a good day to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to speak to you all today and talk about the phishing threat landscape, and of course, spend some time on what we do about that. My name is Keith Abargwin, and I'm the Chief Product Officer at Cofense, the cybersecurity company whose mission is to stop phishing. So let's jump right in. So let's start with a quick discussion on the phishing problem itself. The problem's certainly no mystery to any of us. It's a huge issue and represents the primary initial attack vector into any enterprise. This is the case today across the board. Phishing is ground zero for network attacks, so this is an important attack surface to shore up. And it makes sense in that this is the way adversaries generally get into a network. Inbound email is a must. It's a must for business processes. So getting an email in is relatively easy. And of the millions of emails Cofense sees a year, within those millions of emails, about 10% of the emails reported to us are actually bad. So if we're seeing malicious emails hitting pretty much every enterprise every day, and people are certainly moving fast through their day and getting the mission done, clicks will happen unless we position people and tools to defend against that threat. So adversaries know all this. They know that there's a lot of rotation, for instance, that happens within the DoD community. It is relatively easy to hit a new member of a team with a moderately well-crafted phish and get someone to fall for it. People who haven't recognized the normal email patterns of a job or a role are more likely to click on something. So when you combine phishing, which is the number one vector by far, with the importance of what you're guarding, it's no wonder you see a lot of phishing. And historically, organizations have relied on technology to protect their enterprise. And so the attack, it comes across a wire, the tradecraft is esoteric, at least to most people. And so it's natural to fall back on a technical solution to what on the surface appears to really be a technical problem, which it certainly is in part. But with the support from all over the community, the White House and the DoD initiatives and so forth to address this, we can really make some great strides. So we spend mountains of money and resources on technology with the goal of reducing options for the adversary. But one given is the reliance on people. People need the technology. They need to be able to communicate, so they need to be able to receive and send information. And much like driving a car or operating a piece of machinery or weaponry, there's a responsibility we all have when given the keys to something that's potentially dangerous. Almost every breach you read about is caused by someone clicking on something they shouldn't have. Networks are very good at keeping things on the outside out, but they're generally required to allow certain things from the inside to go out. So the DoD and industry is continuing to evolve the rollout of things like zero trust or multi-factor authentication, and of course proactive patching, and training, which you can see is the focus of Mr. Sherman as well. And this focus on accountability and ensuring every member of the DoD is trained and equipped to support the defensive operations of the DoD enterprise systems and networks. This is the focus of the DC3I, or Defense Cybersecurity Culture and Compliance Initiative. The DC3I is an initiative that aligns really nicely with Cofense philosophies around phishing and how best to deal with that threat. First off, we see this as a challenge of recognition and rapid response connected by extremely efficient information sharing. Those elements Cofense represents by the moniker PDR, or Phishing Detection and Response. And this aligns really nicely with the DC3I since it recognizes the need for both technical and human investment. When you consider the rapidly changing phishing ecosystem, where people are involved, a system to defend that ecosystem hinges on knowledge about the impact that you as a participant in that ecosystem, has on the ecosystem itself. So culturally shifting users to be eager, willing, and informed users of IT systems, aware of the dangers that lurk and how to detect them, is a really valuable and powerful line of defense. A curious, well-informed person is actually an exceedingly good pattern matching engine That's what we as humans do, and we generally do it really well. It's sort of the this fool me once, shame on you approach. When you're fooled once and you feel embarrassed, we learn very, very fast in those circumstances. So a keen awareness of the real, no kidding phishing threat and delivered to the users, if possible, before the threat is even seen, gives the fool me once bit a chance to be set first. So in other words, it's once you see something initially, if you see it before you actually really experience it, and you're fooled once, you get to set that fool me once bit to true. And so training is really important. And when I say training, I'm referring to very high quality training, not the sort of kitschy training that's often the hallmark of what we've seen over the years. It's sort of that every year we have that highly anticipated IT training that feels more like torture really than training. What I'm talking about is really high quality training that's critical to not being fooled again. This phishing awareness need is being codified in the Cyber Awareness Challenge, which, among other things, is requiring a once a year phishing module. And the timing really couldn't be better because the DoD is seeing an enormous amount of phishing, and COVID, frankly, is not helping at all. If I'm not the thousandth person you've listened to speak who said that COVID has created an impact, I'd really be shocked. However, there are a few observations around COVID-19 that I would like to point out. First, the rate of change in the way adversaries went after people in the pre-COVID era was high enough as it was. But when you change the very location of where work is done, when you create an intermingling, if you will, of IT systems between home and work through the teleworking that's happened, you add to the system complexity. You create dynamicism in the system. It's entropy, if you will, that creates an urgency and a stress in users. It stresses the whole system. And whenever you can create stress, you create an opportunity for tradecraft, for adversarial tradecraft, which is my second point. For adversaries, COVID created a great opportunity. People generally were worried. Organizations were not used to the number of remote workers. Your colleague couldn't look over his shoulder and say, "Hey, Jim, did you get this weird email on COVID-19 protocols?" That dynamic no longer existed. And many organizations were just getting their heads around this whole remote access thing, the reliance on Zoom and on various other information sharing technologies that the DoD and all businesses, frankly, or many businesses, weren't used to conducting their business over. So the use of cloud services within COVID sort of went through the roof as companies pivoted to a remote workforce. Dropbox, Google Drive, other cloud sharing technologies expanded, as did the pivot to Microsoft 365 in the cloud away from on-prem Exchange. So as our work environment changed, the adversaries went after that COVID-19 theme, and they went after it hard, frankly. COVID has seen this in the emails being reported into our phishing defense center. So we were very proactive as a company about our outreach and discussions on this topic, and we believe awareness was an imperative, or is an imperative. However, we don't necessarily believe that simulating based on a scare tactic is the way to go. We're not really in the position of catching people per se. We want to train them. And we want them to report when they see something. So that's what we focused on really when it comes to COVID-19. We certainly want to train users on the real threats. Real fish are indeed the real problem. But like our CTO is fond of saying, you don't necessarily need to go down a dark back alley to understand that it's dangerous. You want to educate people without traumatizing them. You want to encourage that curiosity and investigative culture, a culture that questions what they're clicking on and ensuring that that's safe before they do so, and gives them the knowledge to be able to report COVID emails, for instance, and others when they receive them. And we feel the ease of use of something like the Cofense Reporter button is a fantastic way to make it simple to see something and say something. That simple reporting mechanism enables that. The Cofense Reporter button enables that. And it's incredibly important to get the Cofense Reporter button rolled out. Likewise, it's important to equip your security team with great tools and information. The ability to triage email quickly when it's reported to your abuse box is critical to identifying and responding to an attack. And having solid threat intelligence coming into your analyst shop, deployed across as many systems as you can, to ensure that you do, in fact, deal with that threat. And so when we talk about mitigation, we often use the term dwell time, which for us is the sum total of the time from when a threat lands into the inbox to when it's removed. And it's made up of two metrics. One is the time from when the email hits the inbox to the time it's recognized as bad. That's one metric. And the second metric is the time from when it's recognized as bad to when it's actually removed. And so these two metrics, when summed up, make up the total dwell time, or the time you're basically exposed. And we want to minimize that time as much as possible. And when you take that combination of intelligence, weaponized in a defensive way across our fleet of products and services to respond to threats in a manner that reduces that dwell time, it's what we're all about. So let's take a look at a specific example using the US Navy. So NCDoc, and let me pause for a moment and just give a huge shout out to all the NCDoc folks who took part in this exercise. It was a great testament to the professionalism and dedication to this cause, and we're very much appreciative of the work that they did. So what NCDoc did was they rolled out the PhishMe product, and this proof of concept data is shown here. And as you can see, there's enough susceptibility in the organization to show concern. There were key takeaways that Captain Cole shared with us, and given this feedback, as NCDoc rolls this out, they should see a decline in that click rate of their users as they become more aware of the threats coming into their environment. Now, we have a tendency to focus on all sorts of metrics, and resiliency metrics are one of the big ones, and they are indeed an important indicator. But something to keep in mind, too, is the value of situational awareness. And that situational awareness comes from instrumentation and reporting. We need to have a well-informed user base to act as those sensors on your behalf. So let's talk a bit more about that and what phishing detection and response really is all about. We're all familiar with the benefits of defense in depth. There's nothing new to that really at all. And it makes great sense to leverage the technologies we can. So authentication controls like DMARC and validating digital signatures and so forth like DKIM, they should be used for sure. And we should be using everything we can to verify any of the transport control systems we can. Microsoft ATP, G Suite, or other SEGs certainly remove a lot of spam as well. They're layered on top of these technologies. And they also do a good job of sweeping through well-known phishing TTPs. These SEGs also are porous when it comes to the latest tradecraft and tactics that are continually morphing. It's difficult to stay on top of those. So platform integrated controls are working to seal this porosity. And Cofense has, as we'll see a little bit later, some really compelling approaches to get to attack this. We'll get back to this a bit later in the talk. Endpoint protection is also very valuable, but it doesn't necessarily help your users to not click on something or not execute something. It might help once they do that, but it doesn't necessarily prevent it in the first place. So lastly, the security awareness and rapid response is really where your end users become a key part of the detection sensor network, and it's a critical element of this defense in depth model. This fact is what NCDoc and the DoD has recognized and begun to really take advantage of by leveraging the Cofense platform. So Cofense is singularly focused on solving the phishing problem. And we do that through a combination of leveraging exceptionally relevant and timely data that's collected across the globe with people armed with training based on that relevant data and enabled to act confidently. And confidently is really important because it increases the speed and volume of the reporting. And they use easy to use tools to execute that reporting. So let's dig in a little bit deeper into that and take a look at the way we do this. At the beginning of June, Cofense sent out over 1 million simulations. And that's in the first week, and that's really not an uncommon week. On holidays, we can see that spike to far greater. The companies we focused on as an organization are really the big enterprise customers that, much like the DoD, have really consequential missions. The companies we serve are the ones you rely on every day for your family, your healthcare, your financial services, power, water, you name it. And it's really the amount of reported email that makes the difference. To date, Cofense has more than 27 million reporter buttons deployed. I know the slide says 25, but there's more than 27 million today. That's a huge sensor network. Some of these reporters are delivering direct intelligence into the SOC, into your SOC. Others are going into our managed service we call the Phishing Defense Center, or PDC. And we use that knowledge to fuel our proactive response capability that we call auto quarantine. And I'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later. So when it comes to delivering high quality phishing simulations based on the latest threats, we have all the data to back that up. We get the data every day. We see where things are going and trending, and we react to that appropriately. And that data fuels the entirety of the phishing detection and response platform. To me, PDR is a combination of people informed with knowledge, equipped with tools, and enabled to act in a confident manner. We look at all of our Cofense products through those lenses. We ask of each of our features, do you contribute to one of those attributes? And as a result, each of our products is tuned to addressing one or many of those goals. PhishMe focuses on training your users to recognize all human social exploitation approaches. NCDoc, as we discussed, is a great example of how PhishMe can be put to use. The reporter button allows those trained users to see something and say something. It's a button your users use to say something, to report when they see something they think is off. And with a well-trained workforce, your SOC will get more reported email, oftentimes a lot more reported email, and triage allows the analysts to get through the email that reporter has reported with speed and automation and efficiency. And so this gives you much more situational awareness. It improves your situational awareness, telling you specifically what's coming at you. And that's really important in being able to respond. And Vision lets you confidently do that. It lets you confidently seek and destroy, if you will, to search and remediate threats that you know or suspect you have in your email ecosystem. And in the case of a Vision feature called Auto Quarantine, you actually may not know that you have these threats in your ecosystem. It's through our Cofense intelligence and through all of that reported email that Cofense sees that we can ask and direct Vision to search out these threats on your behalf and proactively protect you as we see these inbound threats emerging. It's a very powerful set of tools to deal with those threats that have made it past your perimeters. So regardless of what company you use for your secure email gateways or email delivery, it's really important to be able to respond to threats that make it through. Phishing attacks evade gateways. It's just a fact, and we need to do what we can to minimize the impacts of that. So getting the threat out as quickly as possible is where we focus, and most companies I talk to rely on a combination of SOC analysts and mail response teams to deal with known malware inside the email infrastructure. And this isn't particularly efficient, and it's frankly a losing proposition when you're under an attack. And I'll circle back to this in a moment. So in this workflow I just described, we've reduced it using very pragmatic approaches. And we recommend you use all the tools available to you to help folks engage very quickly in response to phishing attacks. And leverage this power of large numbers, be it Cofense's intelligence alone, which we think is exceptional intelligence, or in combination with other intel feeds that you may have access to. And fly that intelligence across as many systems as you possibly can. As we all know, it only takes one click, so reducing that dwell time across your entire populace has a multiplicative effect. And that's where vision comes into play so effectively. You can search across the entirety of your user base to find a threat that may not have been clicked on yet, but it's there, and you can get rid of that. And so every minute you remove it really can be multiplied across your user base. Let's dig into this a little bit more. I'm going to set the stage by walking through the product line. I'll then give you a sense of how we're seeing the PDR effort being executed today, which, for spoiler alert, is slow, and we're seeing this everywhere. And then I'll show you how we look at the problem, how Cofense looks at the problem. This model assumes you have all the Cofense tools in your quiver. So working from left to right, we have emails entering into the ecosystem. And these can be either cloud or on-prem. The idea is generally the same. Emails land in users' inboxes where they can be viewed. In parallel to the email coming in, we have Vision ingesting and indexing the metadata about the emails. This will include to, from attachments, attachment hashes, URLs, and the like. So we grab all this metadata and index it so it can be searched. And so Cofense Vision's understanding of what's in the inbox is very important to the overall story for why this system works so well and is quite efficient. So going back up to the users. Users are seeing emails in their inbox, and they're going about their daily business. PhishMe is delivering simulations into those inboxes to train those users to recognize bad emails. Data from the intelligence teams provide material for our PhishMe content. So users are being trained to recognize the real threat and report that threat via the reporter button. Reporter is configured most often to deliver these suspicious emails to an abuse box inside security operations, where the SOC analysts will get their hands on it by using triage. And triage will be monitoring that abuse box and providing that SOC analyst with tools to make a determination if something is bad or not. Triage is connected to Vision and provides the command and control for Vision. It's the best experience for using Vision and allows the SOC operator to query quickly who else has received an email when it's determined that something is indeed bad. And that's just circling back on why indexing is so important. That's the reason for that. The second reason the indexing is important with Vision is because Cofense Intelligence is also connected to Vision. Cofense Intelligence is continually growing its knowledge about the phishing threat landscape. And those indicators of bad, IOCs for short, are used to automatically identify bad in an email environment, even when they haven't been reported. So basically, we've crowdsourced intelligence through those 27 million reporter buttons to proactively create it's a redacted set of human-vetted threat indicators that when they're hit, they are bad, period. These indicators, we take great pains to make sure these indicators are indeed bad, and they're very, very accurate. We human vet these. So if Vision finds something using our IOC feed, it is very, very likely that it is bad. So that's why it's so important that Vision has a nice view of what's in the inbox, and we take advantage of all of those intelligence feeds. So let's take a quick look at a normal enterprise email security approach. Most large companies have a combination of network, security, and email management centers, so 3 organizations that handle various aspects of the email mitigation process. And in this example, we do have all 3. On the top left, we have a user that received a bad email. At some point, once they figure out who to send that email to, it lands in the hands of the network center, who gets the email once it comes up in their ticketing queue. They send it on to a SOC who then identifies this as a real threat. They determine what the threat looks like, they provide identifying information and so forth to a mail or a messaging team for action to be taken. The messaging team builds a PowerShell script to run across the email ecosystem, they gather logs, they determine if that script was successful, and if the system is relatively mature, they report back to the SOC team and eventually consider the ticket closed. This process can take days, or we've even seen weeks to do this, and it's not a lather, rinse, repeat process. So if a threat comes in after that ticket closes, the cycle starts up again. It might be a little quicker the second time around, but it does have to sort of happen linearly. And this is obviously a less than ideal approach on a number of levels. The Cofense approach is to arm users and automate this process wherever possible. So in this case, Karen is a well-trained end user. They've been using PhishMe to train Karen, and she's very much aware of what to look for. And so when she receives a bad email, that message is quickly and confidently reported through the reporter button at the top of her email client. This message is sent directly to the SOC's abuse box, where Triage picks it up. And Triage is built to categorize like-type threats, so clustering. What this does is it clusters reports into groups to ease analysis. So if a threat comes in and a number of people report it, you don't have to sift through each and every one. Triage automatically groups those together. And Triage then sends Karen a response to say that her knowledge that she submitted her email and it was seen, and that the SOC is working on it. It gives her a pat on the back, if you will, for responding, and says, "Hey, we got it. Appreciate your diligence." And you can craft the response, obviously, back to users through Triage any way you like. So John, our Triage operator, takes Karen's email, where at first glance he thinks it looks bad. Not 100% sure, but he thinks it looks bad. So staying inside the Triage interface, he then asks Vision to search for others who have received this email and identifies that, let's say, 30 others have been hit with this same email. And this is certainly suspicious. You know, he doesn't think this is a good, he originally thinks that this is strange but isn't sure, but now that he's got a whole bunch of other people that received the same email, that's really raising his suspicions. And so knowing this, John quarantines all the email and sets up an auto-quarantine job to immediately stop any future emails from coming in with these same parameters. Those will also be quarantined. And this whole process happens in minutes. It can happen in less than 5 minutes for John to be able to set this up. And so because John wasn't sure at first glance that this email was bad, he goes back to Triage to take a look at the email and does some deep diving. And let's say he does, in fact, learn that it was malicious. He can then go back to Vision and permanently delete all of those emails that matched that indicator, that search parameter. And if it had turned out that when John did his analysis that the email hadn't been malicious, because John had quarantined the email, he hadn't deleted it, he would have been able to put the 30 plus emails right back where they were just by saying unquarantine. So it's just a few clicks, and that can happen very, very quickly too. So this is a normal workflow when the SOC is involved. If this phishing campaign had been part of an ongoing effort that had been picked up by our Phishing Defense Center, the Cofense intelligence team would have had the indicator scoped out and placed in the intelligence feed ahead of time. With the intelligence feed sending these indicators of compromise out to the Vision fleet, this attack would have actually been stopped before Karen even saw it. So she wouldn't have even had to report it in the first place, because Vision's auto-quarantines indicators fed by our intelligence feed would have been able to pull that email, that threat, out of her inbox before she even saw it. And that's really the power of the network effect. So I'm going to get off the stage with a few comments about FedRAMP. PhishMe is officially FedRAMP moderate, and we chose moderate because we felt that Moderate protections represent a nice alignment with the sensitivity of the data that we're managing. And likewise, the environments that we see the solution existing within. And we've gone through this process, this FedRAMP process, and it's an important element to our commitment to the public sector writ large. The controls, that FedRAMP require place strong emphasis on data protection and data controls and privacy, which is something Cofense has always been focused on. It is a big project for Cofense. It's a big project for anybody, for that matter, and it represents a technical and a fiscal commitment. But in the end, now that we have our authorization to operate, if you're a federal customer, you can take advantage of that streamlined acquisition process of the FedRAMP marketplace, as well as the peace of mind that all of these security controls are in place, well managed, and well maintained. And with that, let me say thank you to everyone for listening, to the organizers of this event. It was great to chat with you all. Thanks to all of you in uniform, absolutely. And for those who support those folks in uniform, you all do an amazing job keeping us all safe and secure. And I hope some of the items that we discussed today will help towards that effort. And all the best to everyone, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you again.
Again, if you'd like to submit a question, please click the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and please take a moment to answer the polling question that will be displayed in just a second. Joey, Jim, and Paul, the floor is all yours.
Well, this is Paul. Thank you, everybody. A couple of comments before we move on to the Q&A session. I know a number of you looking at the attendee list are from civilian agencies and other non-DoD. And originally, when we were putting this presentation together, we were focusing on the DoD. But I do want to let you know that Cofense has a significant number of customers in both state and local partner communities and civilian agencies, in addition to our DoD customers. The other thing I want to point out is that we focus solely on phishing. That is our number one and really the only thing we do. And it's a maniacal focus. And Keith brought it up in the presentation, but I want to stress it. The fact that we have so many people reporting phishing emails with the reporting button gives us deep intelligence into current and new phishing attacks so that we can alert our customers and be more proactive than defensive with just a reporting button. With that, I'm going to take a few questions. Again, please click on the Q&A if you have a questions. Joey, I have one for you. With Cofense Reporter, if you thought you detected phishing but it wasn't, can you bring back the emails?
Hey everyone, yeah, absolutely, Paul. Cofense Triage was designed to not only streamline the analysis and remediation of reported emails, but to also close the feedback loop. So, in the event that someone reported an open enrollment type email, they deleted a very important piece of information, and whenever that gets reported via a button and the SOC analyzes it, Triage can automatically respond back to the user saying, "Hey, this is actually a safe email, and here's the original email attached." So now they have the warm and fuzzy that this email has been analyzed by a professional and it's safe to interact with.
Appreciate that, Joey. Do we integrate with existing ticketing systems? Keith spent a lot of time talking about the workflow process of taking care of a phishing email. Excuse me. Do we integrate with tools that customers might be using, Remedy or other SIM type products?
Yeah, our solutions, they all have APIs that allow for integration with basically any tool out there. We also have apps and direct integrations with the popular solutions like Splunk and ServiceNow.
Excellent. Does Cofense see the emails that are reported?
Yeah, so that's one thing with us. We do offer a managed service, but that's being taken advantage of by our commercial customers. With Cofense Reporter, ultimately the customer decides where the emails are being sent to. So part of the configuration is, where do you want these emails sent? And the button sends it to that place and that place only. Typically a distribution list, within the organization that, one of those mailboxes is monitored by their security operations center. However, using Cofense Vision's auto quarantine feature, government customers can benefit from the network effect of indicators highlighted by our commercial customers. So, you don't necessarily have to contribute to all of those indicators out there, but you can certainly consume from the commercial market. So that's a very great benefit that we provide to federal and state governments.
Excellent, Joey. Thank you. I don't see any more questions right now. Again, you can click on the Q&A button if you have a question. We're running a little on time. Actually, we're running ahead of schedule, so we have time for a few more questions if you have any. If not, we will give you some time back in your day. It's a busy time for everybody and a beautiful summer day, at least here where I am. I don't see any more, so Claire, I will turn it back over to you.